Hi there, Alison here with another Cab Franc du jour. Today we're in Saumur-Champigny and we're looking at the Château de Villeneuve 2017 Le Grand Clos Saumur-Champigny. Château de Villeneuve's history and vineyards can be traced back to 1577. At the time, the estate's name was Bel Air, and it was the youngest son of the de Villeneuve family, Jean-Marie Berthelot, who inherited the domain and then changed its name to Château de Villeneuve. Fast forward to the modern era, and the Chevallier family purchases the property in 1967 and begins to restore its vineyards as well as the cellar. And in 1982, Jean-Pierre Chevallier returned from his studies in Bordeaux and takes over the family domain. The estate and its 28 hectares of vines are located in the commune of Souzay-Champigny. Now, if you recall, there are 9 historical communes that make up the appellation of Saumur-Champigny. We have 6 that are dotted along the Loire River, and then we have 3 that are set back a little bit. Now, the village of Souzay-Champigny is actually located very close to the Loire River, but the commune, in terms of its borders and where the vineyards are located, are actually stretching over a 4.5 kilometer piece of land from the edge of the Loire River towards the southwest. And there are 3 areas for viticulture in Souzay-Champigny. The vineyards that are located close to the Loire River are on the Terroir limestone plateau. And then as we move south a little bit, in and around the hamlet of Champigny, we actually find a different limestone here that dates to the Eocene period, but actually makes it a little bit younger than the Turonian-Tufo chalk. And then further south still, in the southwest corner of the commune, we find another pocket of vineyards that are on the Turonian-Tufo chalky limestone. Now, why does any of this matter? Well, from a bird's eye view, it's easy to generalize about the microclimate as well as the soils of the appellation of Saumur-Champigny. But of course, as we drill down further, commune by commune, there is actually a lot of nuance here. Now, in the commune of Souzay-Champigny, the vineyards that are closest to the Loire River will receive the strongest moderating influence. This will impact bud break as well as maturities. And as we move away from the Loire River, that influence becomes less and less. In addition to that, the soils will vary throughout the commune. The topsoil will vary in terms of its composition, that mix of clay, silt, and sand, as well as the limestones will vary in terms of their properties as it relates to water retention, as well as their mineral content. And all of this combined, all these factors in terms of the climate as well as the soils, will vary from vineyard to vineyard, from parcel to parcel. And this will then inform the vineyard's decisions in terms of how they work with the fruit in the cellar, in terms of fermentation, maceration, cap management, elevage. So you kind of need to know where you are in Souzay-Champigny to get a sense of what you might be dealing with in terms of the finished wine. Now, getting back to today's wine, of course, the vineyards for Château de Villeneuve are located very close to the Loire River in Souzay-Champigny, less than 200 meters away. And in fact, today's wine is coming from a specific block of about 3 hectares that's the closest to the chateau. So we're less than 50 meters away from the Loire. So there's a strong moderating influence. And Jean-Pierre explained to me that in fact this block tends to ripen about 8 days ahead of the rest of the vineyard. Now, in terms of the soil, we are on that Turonian-Tufo chalky limestone plateau, but more specifically, we are on the middle Turonian-Tufo chalk, and this is a soft micaceous chalk. And the topsoil here is relatively shallow, has a moderate degree of stoniness, and it can be characterized as a silty clay. So there's a little less sand in the topsoil here. The vines are around 50 or so years of age on average, and the vineyard is all farmed, certified organic, and this is the estate's top wine, and they only make it in specific vintages, the best vintages. In terms of what they're doing in the cellar, they hand harvest the fruit, it's all destemmed, and then they do a cold soak for about 7 days before fermentation kicks off. And then fermentation is done with indigenous yeast in these 40 hectoliter oak vats, and it spends about 20 days on skins, and they do some regular pigeage or punch downs during that time. And then élevage takes place in a combination of 12,000 liter oak foutre and 600 liter demi-moods. Now, with this wine today, knowing that it is the top wine of Château de Villeneuve, knowing that it would be a bit on the younger side, of course, being a 2017, I decided to do a little exercise of opening the bottle very early and sort of taking notes, regular notes at regular intervals over the course of several hours. So I opened the wine at 8:30 this morning, and now we're about 6.5, 7 hours into the wine being open, and it was absolutely fascinating to see how this wine evolved. Now, when I first opened the bottle, in terms of the notes on the fruit, this wine was very closed. It was almost impossible to get anything in terms of fruit. Fruit kind of leaned a little darker, but now over the course of time, it's evolved into become a bit more pure fruited, a bit more savory, and sort of lightened the fruits a little bit. Now, the fruits are definitely more red fruited, like sweet red fruits like cherries. There's a little bit of raspberry here too. There's also some blue fruited notes as well. And again, in the beginning, the pyrazines were almost non-existent. I didn't pick up anything, but within about 2 hours, it was very clear that there was this lovely thyme note, a bit of cedar leaves, and some cedar wood as well. And then a spice note started to come forward at about 2 hours as well, a bit of a clove note. But where this wine really gets exciting was the whole palate experience as it opened up over the course of time. Now, in the beginning, the acidity was it was there, but it wasn't really showing me much. It wasn't telling me anything about the wine. And the tannins, it was literally this mouthful of concentrated fruit and tannin. And the tannins were like all over the place. It was as if I was standing very close to a pointillism painting, and it was like millions of dots in front of my face, big dots, little dots, some dots concentrated in certain pockets, and then some dots a little bit more spread out. But you couldn't really tell what you were looking at because it was just this mess of dots. And that's how the tannins felt to me first thing this morning when I opened this wine. And then over the course of time, amazingly, the tannins became more uniform and also more grid-like in terms of their structure. And in addition to that, the acid evolved as well. It became more vibrant and then started to interact differently with the tannins. Now here we are, as I said, about 7 hours into this process, and the tannins have literally come together into this uniform grid-like structure, and they've become finer and finer and closer knit during this period. So initially they were kind of almost corduroy-like in terms of texture, and then they evolved into this fine cotton-like texture, and now they're like this crushed velvety texture on the finish. It's very silky in the mouth. And there is a certain chalkiness as well to the finish in terms of where the palate is at currently after being open for about 7 hours. As I said, the way the acidity and its vibrancy is interacting with the fruit as well as the tannins has really become much more concise, much more focused. In addition to that, there's some added layers here in terms of flavor profiles that are coming through. Extra spice notes like a star anise note. There's a bit of a green coffee bean note. And then there's this great milk chocolate element to the palate as well. And not like the commercial Halloween milk chocolate. I mean like good quality milk chocolate, like 55% cocoa, high quality milk chocolate. But the way that the tannins have changed over the course of this 7-hour period has really been fascinating in terms of this movement towards uniformity, towards this grid-like structure. And at the beginning, the wine was like this sort of monstrous mouthful of tannins and fruit, and now we've kind of cinched in, we've become a bit more narrow. The wine sits more vertically as well as horizontally on the palate, which is really quite fascinating, and it's now become more finesse driven, more elegant. There is this fineness to the wine. It has a classic sort of demeanor to it. It's really been fascinating, and I know that Cab Franc needs oxygen, and I've learned this over the course of this project and over the course of time. And I try to do this from time to time now, is let a wine evolve, taste it regularly, and see what happens. And you really see why we tend to decant things and why it's good to open wines earlier to get sort of the maximum enjoyment out of wine Actually, I had a conversation earlier this week with my friend Tom in the UK, who opened a wine from Chinon and said that he tasted it over a few days to see sort of how it evolved. And it's a really fun kind of exercise to get into once in a while, you know, if you have the time. But this is a top wine from Saumur-Champigny, and if you've not had it, I certainly recommend seeking it out. And if you have a favorite producer from Saumur-Champigny or a favorite wine, please let me know what it is in the comments below. And of course, as always, I will be back again soon with another wine. Cheers.